Bikes and bike parts are no longer made in the United States. It's far too expensive, and the vast manufacturing industry for the bike world exists in Asia. That is common wisdom, and that is largely the rule. However, there are exceptions, and in this video, I speak to CEOs and others at brands that are making frames and wheels and parts here in the US. Why build here? Do cyclists care where their stuff is made? And what are the trade-offs for domestic manufacturing versus outsourcing to Asian factories? This is part 3 in my Why Your Bike is Made in Asia series. For part 1, I spoke with Bill McGann, who watched the US and Europe, in his words, squander the bike industry to Asia, going back to the 70s. I directly stole the title of his book for this YouTube series, and I very much enjoyed speaking with him. Part 2, I spoke to CEOs and others, often under condition of anonymity, about what potential effects the proposed Trump tariffs could have on where they make stuff and why. And now, for part 3, I speak to a number of folks here in the US, such as Drew Medlock, CEO at Allied Cycle Works in Arkansas, and CEO of HED Cycling in Minnesota, Ben Farver, founder of Argonaut Cycles in Oregon, Hans Heim, CEO of Ibis Cycles in California, and Chad Davis, brand manager of Gulo Composite in North Carolina. Of course, this is not a comprehensive list of all the brands making stuff in the US. There are plenty of others, such as Ceres making racks up in Wisconsin, or brands like Envy, who make some stuff in the United States, in their case in Utah, and then other stuff is made and sourced in Asia. Instead of cherry picking some of the quotes to make this a shorter thing, I decided to run most of these interviews at close to full length because I found the conversations interesting, and I hope that you do too. So now, let's go talk to these folks about why they are building bikes and wheels and parts in the US. Drew Medlock, CEO of Allied Cycle Works. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me on.
Now, Drew, you've got a deep amount of experience at a number of bicycle companies over the years, retail, and then Canyon US vice presidency for a while, president at Moots, which is making titanium bikes here in Colorado Springs, and now you've been CEO at Allied, building bikes there in Arkansas for many years. So I've been asking folks a simple question with a very complicated answer, which is why make bikes in the US?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of reasons why. For Allied, our story is kind of a simple one, is that we basically started from the dust of another bike company that was domestically manufacturing. There was a company called Guru out of Montreal, and they basically fell into some hard times, and our founder bought all their frame building equipment from auction, and we basically just kind of started recreating what they were doing as a business model. And then that turned into the evolution of like making our own models of frames in house. So when we launched the Alpha, and then the Able, who won uh, Dirty Cans, or Unbounder, which was Dirty Cans at the time, like that was like the first bikes that we really made that were our own designs, that weren't just kind of a recreation of what Guru was doing. So that was kind of the path we started on. So for Allied as a brand, um, it wasn't really like an option. It was just like, this is like, we're going to start making frames, and it turned into what it is.
Mm-hmm. So that was in 2016 when it was started by Doug Zell of Intelligentsia Coffee, who's since been a driver behind the Meteor.
Yeah.
Sam Pickman, who's still there. I work with Sam at Specialized, who's still there. Um, and Tony Karklins, who from deep bike background as well. So yeah, it had the vision in 2016, but after many years, is it still novel to make bikes in the U.S.? Yeah, and like, what are the benefits of doing everything
Sure.
in house, and what are the trade offs? Because like cost is the one that everybody points to, that most everybody points to, beyond being a boutique builder of very small batches of frames. Like, well, we just can't compete on cost, but. And then being nimble and being able to make changes quickly is a common pro that people point to as to why it's good to be in control of things. But after 5 years under the hood there at Allied, what are you saying?
Yeah, there's a lot of pros to in-house manufacturing. I mean, obviously, for us, I think one of our biggest strengths is our R&D team, and our ability to take products from ideation into production readiness very quickly. Like we can really control that end of the process 100%, and we have a crazy idea. Like if you looked at the frame that Payson was racing on at Unbound this year, I mean, that's something that we had an idea that we wanted to test, and literally 45 days later he's racing on an Unbound to a top 10 finish. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're able to do in house that's really cool. And I think a lot of brands that don't have the hands-on experience and capability that we do, that they couldn't do something like that. um, so that's a really big strength. I think when you get manufacturing dialed in and you have something that you can really train, automate, and control the quality of, you can get amazing results by doing it all yourself. But it's also a trade-off, because I think what I we've learned over the last several years is that um, you know you have to pick your battles a little bit about what you want to focus on manufacturing. You can't be amazing at every single thing as a factory. And when I go to look visit factories in Taichung before, they don't do everything unless you're Giant. Giant does everything, but besides that, most factories specialize in this very specific thing. And so that's one of the things we've had to realize, is that we can do everything, but should we do everything? And so we've had to pick our battles a little bit there.
Mm-hmm. One thing that you've been able to do is compete with other high-end brands on price, and that I'm not saying your bikes are inexpensive by any means. They're still an investment. But if you look at like a Shimano Dura-Ace build or a SRAM Red Axis build, that is often like right in line, if not just a little bit lower than a similar build from a Trek or a Specialized. So how are you able to do that?
Yeah, I think if you look at the highest end bike, comparing our top end bike with Dura-Ace to S Works, we're within the same price range, which we at that level we can be somewhat competitive and make money. But if you go down to like a 105 bike, we're not even freaking in the ballpark. So very different deal. Which on the higher end bikes, there's just more margin to go around, and there's more latitude for us to play with. And we're for those bikes made here that are at the top level. I mean, we're investing in our manufacturing and that part of it. We're not investing in a pro tour team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that's when you're buying an S Works, you're paying for you're paying for their marketing and pro tour team. Where we're you're buying an Allied, you're paying for something different.
Mm-hmm. For your customers, this is asking you to speculate on what people are thinking when they buy an Allied, but just anecdotally, I'm sure you must talk to a lot of your customers. How much of the made in Arkansas or made in the United States is part of the decision making process versus the technology or
Yeah.
how cool the thing looks or how it rides?
I think it's definitely something that people consider, and I think it is can be a driver, but I definitely don't think it's the only decision. At the end of the day, especially on the high end, customers are more motivated to buy the spec of the bike. Does it fit the purpose for what they're trying to do? Does they fit their needs in terms of customization, paint, all those things? That seems to be the most important thing. And I think that part of making it here is a unique thing about the brand, but it's definitely not the deciding factor.
How about for the pieces that go on the bike? Not that you can get a made in America Dura-Ace group or made in
Sure.
America SRAM Red group, but like wheels or hubs or other pieces like this. As the person responsible for the brand, are you looking at American options? Is that of interest? Is that into the equation?
Um, yes and no. I mean, we look at things pretty objectively in terms of like, hey, what are our customers looking for? Like, what brands are doing a good job marketing their product and selling their product to our customers? Um, that's really important. Number two, it's also business compatibility. Who's able to work nicely with us. In that case, though, a lot of brands who are U.S. made have really fit into our portfolio nicely. Our buddies at Industry 9 in North Carolina or Wolf Tooth up in Minneapolis, like both of them have been really great partners from us just their manufacturing flow and ability to share ideas with us has been really complimentary. And also speccing works well. Like for all of us, we kind of all build in small batches and all build to order. So
Mm-hmm.
our flow for needing to consume goods and produce goods really matches theirs, which works great. Where, for
Mm-hmm.
example, ordering from maybe a big wheel manufacturer in Asia, where I have to order in huge batches and air freight it and all that stuff, like it doesn't work that great for our business model. So
Mm-hmm. How vital is Arkansas to your business model? I mean, RCC investments of the Walton grandsons are investors in that, along with Roth and other cycling businesses. Where the Bentonville hub is
yeah,
huge because of that. But that wasn't the initial impetus. Am I correct about that? Like
well,
they
the
weren't.
brand's always been Arkansas based since this was founded. So that's Arkansas is the brand's home 100%. And we made the move up to Northwest Arkansas about 5 years ago, and a lot of that had to do with the investment that our owners, investors, were making in the community, and with our brand Allied being a part of that, and it's been very complimentary for the brand for obvious reasons. That a there's just so much momentum for the cycling scene here, but B for us, I mean, we do this because this is our passion and our inspiration, and having this area to work with, and the trails and roads and gravel roads that we have here are absolutely like what drive our product innovation and what we build.
Yeah, speaking with Sam Pickman about exactly that. That's something I can very easily see the proof of that in the pudding of
Yeah,
riding some of the chunkier gravel. And you guys were out early with wider tire clearance on the Able. So I'm curious
for
to see
sure. Yeah, I
what
mean,
comes
we
down.
listen to our athletes and think about the market a lot, but selfishly, we also think more about what we want to
Sure.
ride.
Yeah, if you can build your own stuff and you're not building it for yourself, then yeah, what are you doing? One last speculative question for you, sir. Then I'll let you go. Where do you see Allied in 10 years?
Yeah, so we are really working behind the scenes to keep pushing forward from a products perspective. We definitely have a huge passion for high end performance product racing, that side of things. And even though we started more of as a drop bar and off road, or drop bar and road kind of brand, our passion has not ever been limited to that, and we're very focused on keeping expanding into all the categories that we're stoked about. Which obviously we launched the BC40 mountain bike a couple of years, and that's been a huge success for us. And we're going to keep building on that momentum, and build bikes that we think that are cool, that cover all the genres. So I think for us, if it's a bike that you can put a number plate on, we're probably interested in trying to make it.
All right. Well, keep up the good work, Drew. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
And Head, CEO of HED Cycling. Good morning. Great to see you. How are you?
I'm well. I'm sitting here in Minnesota, no snow, waiting for Christmas.
I just spoke to your man Chase Work yesterday, who convinced me against better reason to come participate in the Day Across Minnesota, 240 miles west to east. I don't know what I'm in for, but he told me a deep head wheel or deep head wheels would be the tools of choice to do so.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to talk about that before you come and we can get you all set up, Ben.
All right, that'd be fun. So, Ann, as you know, I've been talking to folks about where they make stuff and why. And the vast majority of bike things are made in Asia. And there are a few companies such as yours making stuff in the US. So I just wanted to ask a simple question of why still swim upstream, so to speak. And that I know a little bit about the founding of HED. Your husband Steve starting in the basement of a bike shop back in the day, making aero wheels since the 80s. But I'd just love to hear your perspective about why HED Cycling today is continuing to make wheels there in Minnesota.
Sure. Gosh, yes. Head has been around for a long time. The infancy of the start of Head is a bit of a love story. So if you want to hear a little bit of a love story, I
Love a
love
love
telling
story.
it. So the bike industry, there are some love stories out there. So basically in the early 80s when I was a young triathlete. I saw Julie Moss finish the Ironman in that iconic finish, and I was like, I really want to do that race. So I was able to qualify for the Hawaiian Ironman, but I didn't have funds to enter it or a nice bike. So a friend said, this guy named Steve Head, he owns a bike shop in Minnesota, go ask him. So he gave me the entry fee money and a beautiful basso. So yes, he loved Italian and European frames. So I started racing. I wasn't winning everything, but at that time, Steven saw Francisco Mosier set the hour record on those double disc wheels. And Steven came from a background of water skis and skateboards. So he basically went in his garage with a friend and made literally the first disc wheel. He gave the second one to me, and I raced on it a bit. But this other guy, Scott Molina, won everything. And all of a sudden, we had this product. And again, bike shop owner, poor triathlete, how are we going to start this business? So I saw that there was a triathlon, and the first prize was a car. So I went and did this race, won the car, believe it or not, went to the bank, got $14,000 and handed it to Steve, and their head started with earnings of a car, Subaru, and the idea of Steve's brain of making this wheel. So it is truly a love story of how this came together. We ended up obviously, starting the business. I worked alongside him more in the background all those years, and we got married and had a family.
That's fantastic. So you literally made it happen from the beginning.
Very beginning.
That's
yes. It wasn't
story.
all me. It was just a really wonderful partnership between the two of us.
Sure. And there are still very small, like boutique manufacturers around the U.S. Think of like custom frame manufacturers or, tinkerers, engineers, mad scientist types making things in very small batches. But it seems like once companies reach scale, even highly, engineering-driven companies such as yours, there's often like, well, we can do it a lot cheaper somewhere else. We could be more profitable, or even like, the only way we can compete is if we take our manufacturing, quote unquote, offshore, so to speak. So, fast forward to 2024, how much of HED product is made there in Minnesota, and why is it made there versus, working with any number of factories and manufacturers elsewhere for a lower rate?
Sure. So, the wheels are in my blood. So the passion I have to continue the legacy of HED is really what gets me up every morning. So did this happen overnight? No. So, Ben, from that very first disc wheel, and you would sell a disc wheel, and then you'd buy something new. So the infrastructure of HED, if you could turn around and look at the factory behind me, which is about 25,000 square feet. The tooling that we've invested in all these years is really why we can still make products here safely. So, if you saw back here, basically, from the raw carbon that is sourced here in the US to the cutting tables and to the layup tables and the tooling, it's all done right here. So if you step behind this desk, you're going to see a handful of very amazing staff that's been with me for, boy, some of them 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And, we really take pride in manufacturing right here. And I think that the main reason I'm here is I really, above all else, besides bringing joy to cycling, which I feel that we do, is the safety I feel when I make product right here. Basically, between just the tooling and the staff, but all our wheels, all our carbon wheels are made here. So, to get a product to market, there's really something called can Annie sleep at night? Basically. Seriously, if you ask my staff, did it pass her and the whole staff's, engineering staff's quality? I mean, it's from the materials we use, the testing we go through. I mean, it's literally the UCI testing is all back here, plus more. The drop test, the lean test, the bump machine test, the static load, the greenhouse. It is all here. We do it all in-house. And that's, I guess, the reason, and the main reason is I want people to understand that it's really the safety of the product that we manufacture and why we're here, because we believe in the process that we have, and not only the aerodynamics. I mean, as you know, we've been going to the wind tunnel, and we still have gone to the wind tunnel probably more than most other companies because we started in the 80s, but we believe that there is this quality you pay for when you buy a HED product.
Do you make any aluminum there, or is aluminum outsourced?
Right. So I was waiting for that question. You're right. So, we do not roll and extrude aluminum here. We did years ago when we made that 3-spoke here. But if you look at our alloy wheels, they are also very popular. So though the extrusion and the rims do come from Asia. So we do get a specific aluminum rim that comes in raw. And when a lot of other folks were making the carbon clinchers that were rim brake, we felt we didn't want to do that. So we invented our turbine surface, and we do all the machining here. So we do get raw and do finished goods here, but a majority of just our aluminum Emporia rim, our Den rims, does come from Asia.
For your customers, how much, when they're purchasing HED wheels, how much of it is interest in the technology that HED is providing, and how much of it is where the product is made? Do you think that the made in the U.S. is part of the attraction for some folks, or are they just interested to get a deep, fast wheel or a super light fat bike wheel or whatever it is that their passion has led them to?
I think it's both. I think because if you know the brand HED and you think of the quality that you're getting, we have several repeat customers. So sometimes a Friday morning, I'll just pick up the phone for the kicks, and it's very interesting because at first they're not sure it's me, and I'll chat about the product and, hey, quite a bit about the product. And it's amazing to me how many folks on the phone have said, I'm on my 6th, 7th, 8th set of HED wheels, whether it's carbon or aluminum. So I think there is this amazing customer service we still give. Like, we pick up the phone. Believe it or not, if you call, you're going to get a human, which I think is really important still. I mean, not 100% of the time, but most of the time you will. So I think that there is this brand awareness that people really, really want something made here. I try to tell our story. I try to let everybody know that, I feel really, really proud that an employee walks in and says, hey, I need you to sign this. I'm going to buy a house. I mean, there's nothing that makes me feel better than I can provide health insurance and 401k. I mean, that's, like I said, gets me up in the morning. Does that matter to a lot of folks? I think we just need to tell our story more so people understand why our company is here and why we believe our product is worth and the value, because it is going to be priced higher as some of the other products made not in the US. But it's an educational process. I mean, this is why I'm chatting with you, Ben. A lot of people need to know why we're here and why it's important that you buy US goods.
Speaking of U.S. goods, I was intrigued to hear you say that you're sourcing carbon from the U.S. Like, that's one thing I've heard many brands say, like, well, we can't even get the raw carbon. The Japanese, for whatever reason, have seeming like a lock on that, whether it's Mitsubishi or Toray. There's very, very few manufacturers like Giant and Time making their own carbon.
Sure.
Who's the American carbon supplier?
So Hexcel is made here in the U.S. Mitsubishi is got a very good supply here also, and there's some Toray also, but there's actually looms weaving here in the U.S. And a lot of our products are made with certain carbons that are US and then resins that are also part of US. So, it's good as a supplier to have a couple different vendors. So, it was very difficult during COVID for me to get enough carbon. So we have to source from different places. But yes, they actually do weave carbon right here. We get, I would say, very similar to what the aircraft and the aerospace are getting. So that's another reason I feel very proud about manufacturing here in the US, because we know the carbons that we're getting and how good they are.
Mm-hmm. Last question, ma'am, and then I'll let you go. You said the Bossa was an early bike for you. What is your current bike of choice?
Oh boy, that's a hard one.
You can list multiples.
I have multiples. Yes, I mean I Zwift a lot, so I'm on a Zwift bike, and I've had everything from, Treks and Quintana Roos and light speeds, and oh gosh, the list goes on and on of what we've got in my garage basement. Stephen was a huge collector, so Leonard Zinn made him a frame. I had a custom made fat bike by Peacock. I mean, if you looked at the amount of bikes in our garage, it's filtered through my family. So several.
All right. Well, perhaps when I come out for a day across Minnesota, I could do a factory tour and maybe even take a peek at your bike collection, if I could be so bold as to ask.
Oh, sure. You're more than welcome. And I think the day across Minnesota is in August. So
Yes.
We usually are there in some way and form. There's, been known to be on that course supporting different folks. So it'd be really great to see you, Ben.
Okay.
Thought about doing that one, but I don't know. It's a pretty long day.
It seems like a terrible idea, but
yeah,
also make a good story. I'm a sucker for such things.
Sure.
Well, Ann Head, CEO of HED Cycling, thank you for your time and congratulations on your legacy and best of luck for the future.
Okay. It was great speaking with you. And I look forward to listening to the other folks too.
All right. Thanks. Ben Farver, founder of Argonaut Cycles. Good to see you, sir. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, everyone, asterisk, nearly everyone is making their bikes in Asia. Very, very few are making bikes, certainly at scale in the U.S. Argonaut is a very notable exception to that. So just have a simple question. Why make bikes in the U.S.?
It's a good question. I think for us, we haven't really ever had the option to make bikes in Asia. So it wasn't as much of an active choice as it was that just never made sense for our production style. So when I started making carbon bikes, I only wanted to make custom bikes, and small one-off kind of custom production is just not feasible to outsource, period. So especially to Asia, our volumes were so low that nobody would really kind of consider the tooling, and then the tooling investment for that low of a volume of bikes wouldn't really make sense. Fast forward to now, we have looked at it from time to time. So the Supernaut is our production bike that is not stock and is not made to order. So we have looked into maybe making our Supernaut line in Asia. And I think that we continue to choose not to, kind of for two primary reasons. One is the speed of adaptation of new technologies into the bike. So changes in layout pattern, additions of other materials like aramid fibers. We want to be able to implement those more quickly than we would be able to do so with another manufacturer, especially if we're doing sort of high volume. We would have to wait too long for a product line to make its way through the system to implement changes we want to. So that kind of speed of adaptation and innovation is really key for us. And then also, I think that we're still too small of a volume to really have the level of control over quality that we would need. So I think that the bigger manufacturers, you're giant and you're specialized. If you own the factory, then you are essentially, making your own bikes in your own factory, right? So you can have a really high control over quality and the controls that go through the system. If we were to go and outsource our manufacturing to Asia, the investment for us to have somebody there on the ground, making sure that every part that's coming out meets our criteria, essentially, it just wouldn't really be cost effective. So it's really those two things that we do look at it every once in a while. And then there's also, so not even necessarily Asia, but there are new production manufacturers coming up available online in Portugal and Germany. So in Europe, and I think some Eastern European too. That's a little bit more compelling for us just because the volumes are a little bit more accessible. And the language barrier is a little bit less. But again, it's when we looked into those options, it was really kind of the lack of ability to implement our same level of complexity in the layup pattern that we just wouldn't be able to make the same bike here. I mean, we wouldn't be able to make the same bike there in either direction as we can here. So for us, quality and innovation are kind of paramount, and we can't do those two things as well. That it's really sort of the core of our business if we're to outsource manufacturing.
Mm-hmm. For your customers, how important is the location of where the product is made? Do you think it's the technology? I mean, this is asking you to speculate, but do you think it's the technology that Argonaut provides that is of interest, or is it the made in America that carries weight? Not that there's one monolith of a customer, but just anecdotally and talking to your writers, what's their interest?
Most typically, I think that our customers like the fact that they know where that bike is made, and that gives them a little bit more personal relationship with it and with us.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not sort of in their top 3 of what they're looking for in a new bike. It's certainly a bonus for sure, but for most of them, it's not like, well, it has to be made in the U.S. and so I really only have 2 options or 3 options, and you guys are, one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been of a mind that just because something is made in the U.S., it's inherently better. I mean, that's not, there's the composite manufacturing. There's amazing composite manufacturing all over the world, especially in Asia. So it really needs to stand on its own merits from a composite engineering standpoint if we make it here. So in that vein, I've never really touted our bikes as being first and foremost made in USA from a marketing standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like quality and attention to detail, and there's no other way than just sort of stubborn, you just have to do it yourself kind of thing, rather than being a champion of American manufacturing. I mean, which I am, of course. I'm definitely go USA for sure, but that's not the big driver. It's not that's not the big driver of why we make stuff here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And just the ability to have that finite control, the speed of being able to implement changes when you want, not when your number comes up at the factory where you're behind 14 other brands.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, a product design is I can't remember who said it, 90% of a product's cost is in the design itself. And then you're invariably going to want to make tweaks and changes. And for us, it's so nice and such a luxury to be able to implement those small things, sort of almost in real time rather than waiting for a whole production run to come through. UDH is a really good example. We were caught a little bit on the back foot on UDH and gravel. And we were able to design and implement and start change our dropout style really way more quickly than we would have been able to if we were manufacturing somewhere else. It would have taken years rather than months.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take on average to build an Argonaut frame there in Bend?
There are about 50 to 60 man hours in each frame. And that's kind of with our sort of a more standard, call it, paint scheme that you would see out there. Once you get into more complex custom paint schemes, and that those hours really start to spike up pretty well. But generally speaking, it's about 50 to 60 hours.
No further questions for you, Your Honor. Appreciate your time. Thanks for all the good work up there. It's cool to see the continuing evolution of the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for including me.
They use whatever technology is current at the time, like whatever the newest, best thing is. And then they kind of hunker down and stick with that. And then it gradually becomes less competitive over time. And they're reluctant to change because they're in the middle of making stuff and trying to, be a profitable business. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where they become less competitive. And then somebody else builds a new factory that utilizes all the new ideas and leapfrogs them. And so we see that over time with a lot of the factories we work with. They start out and they have an advantage. And then after a few years, it's normal. And after a few more years, they're, wishing that they could change everything. But it's like doing brain surgery on yourself. You're in the middle of making stuff. And how much time can you put into R&D and changing the whole line? So they tend to just keep doing what they're doing and maybe build another factory or, get leapfrogged by somebody.
Mm-hmm. So for you, for Ibis as a customer, you can be more agile of moving from one factory to another where you're not having to do all the investment in the tooling and setting things up. Is that part of the attraction, or is that part of how the world works?
That's a good observation, and it is harder than that because of the relationships and some of the time the factories are busy. They're not taking on new customers because they're the most desirable place to be.
Sure.
But in general, yeah, we're freer to move around. But reestablishing a relationship with a factory is no easy thing. Like, it takes a while to get to know everybody and get your workflow to be effective. And so we would never do that lightly. It's a big thing. You only do it if you really feel like you need to.
Sure. Well, how about this? Yeah, Ibis you've been there for 21 years now. Is my math correct?
Ibis brand has been around since 1981, and it kind of took a nap for a year and a half, about in the year 2000-ish, 2001, right in there. And then we got it started up again around 2003 and been going since then.
Yeah. So in those 21 years, how many different factories have you worked with?
Oh, probably 5.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And another of other CEOs I've spoken to said, yeah, cost is a part of it for manufacturing, but just going with a cheaper frame at a different country isn't as simple as like, a consumer clicking an Amazon button and something just shows up, because as I mentioned, it takes a long time to set up the relationships, make sure the quality is up to your standards, and then just the whole infrastructure chain, because there's not a bicycle making button where a complete bicycle comes out.
Yeah, it takes years.
Easy bake oven. Putting all the pieces in place takes a lot of doing. I'd just like to back up a little bit though and ask, since all your bikes but one are made in Asia, why are you making the XC in the US? Why is there one US made bike?
It sort of defies conventional wisdom, as I'm sure you're hearing. A lot of people say it's impossible to do, and I mostly agree with them. To make bikes competitively in the United States, And you can see, like, if you price things based on what they cost, then you get something like the Cervelo California, which was like a $10,000 road frame.
Yeah, the frame. Yeah.
Just frame.
Yes,
And
I remember visiting them making that California. Why is this so special? Well, it's made here. Was there expertise that's unique to California?
yeah,
And you
well,
all the machines in the Cervelo California factory were in Taiwanese machinery. It was like Mandarin writing on the machinery.
yeah.
So,
So there's from a business philosophy, there's cost-driven pricing, which is what they were doing. And then there's market-driven pricing, which is you figure out what your customers want to pay, and you work backwards from that, and you have to figure out how to make it at a profit. And so that's what we're doing. And if we took one of our XE frames and did, cost-driven pricing, then it would be a $10,000 frame, without a doubt. But you have to start, and then we've gone through the whole process. We've basically re-engineered the process of making frames from beginning to end, with an eye towards getting the labor cost down, which is the major component of the cost. And so we've had a lot of success with that. We probably reduced it by 60-70% so far. And so now we're in the realm where we have a sellable product that we won't lose a huge amount of money on if we, it's kind of close to break even, I'd say. And the next step for us is we can see, like just with modeling it out, that the line between, the line of our decreasing costs as we engineer out the labor, and the line of increasing costs from our suppliers in Asia, they're going to cross. And so there's a bunch of advantages to making stuff nearer to where you're at. And between those and then the actual costs, we're looking at parity, or it should be pretty similar when we launch our next bike out of our factory. And part of that is because we're going to pick a model that should sell in higher volume, and the volume makes a huge difference. Like you can see companies like Rivian, they're just trying to get the volume up because then they're going to be able to distribute all those costs over a greater number of units. It's somewhat the same for us on a much smaller scale. So the next bike we do is going to be more of a mainstream bike, and we should sell enough of them where the cost of that frame should be pretty similar to the landed cost of a frame from one of our suppliers. So that's what we're shooting for. Yeah.
How have you been able to reduce time so drastically? And I've been told it can take anywhere from like 160 to 190 hours per frame, because carbon just requires so many hands, so much personal time.
Yeah.
Are robotics involved, or like what's the secret sauce?
That's another path where you can spend a huge amount of money on technology, but we're more looking at just step by step the process. Like companies like Gorilla Gravity, they tried to use a heavy dose of technology to save money. So kind of expensive machines. The machines that do the automated layup and pressing and stuff, it's like a $10 million investment. And so that was actually like a vendor they would use. But still, like if you want to have it in-house and really own it, it's like a larger expense than we're, interested in risking. But there are companies who are working on it. So that will probably come to fruition in the next few years, I would say. The way we're looking at it is thermoset and laying the layup, the finishing, the curing, all that. the painting of it, all that stuff, we just look at it very methodically and figure out how to take time out of the process and still have a super high-end product. So one of the biggest things we did was we made it so the finish of the part as it comes out of the tool is almost net. There's hardly any defects to it, because you were talking about 160 hours or something. I think we're down in the 30-hour range.
Okay.
And a lot of manufacturers will spend a couple of days on filling all the little pinholes and sanding and primering. And I think we've got that part of the process down to 3 or 4 hours.
Wow. Okay.
And instead of 2 days. And that took a lot of research and trial and error, trying different resin systems and stuff like that. But and different cure cycles, but it totally works. We have a really beautiful finish quality out of the tool. Another part of it is when you're doing the layup itself, it can be really tedious and time consuming. And we figured out a way to take, I think it's 2/3 of the time out of the layup. So, and it actually makes a better product, but you put a lot of engineering into the way you're cutting out the pieces. Most of the factories we know, they used to cut out all the composite, the unidirectional fiber. They used to cut it out by hand. And then they got the CNC cutting machines, but they were still using the same patterns and basically not very sophisticated cut patterns. So we have cut patterns now that are like a single piece will be this long and wrap around multiple features, but it's all figured out and nested really well with other pieces, so you don't waste material. And when you go to lay up a part that has 120 pieces versus one that has 300 and something, it just goes much faster to have 120. So it's that simple, but it's kind of an investment in upfront engineering.
Sure. Now that you have this new, much more efficient system sorted out, wouldn't it be much cheaper to take that and go to one of your vendor factories and say, hey guys, could you please do it like this?
It would. And we've actually had our vendors tour our factory, and we've shown them the stuff we've done. But it goes back to the first thing we were talking about. Once you build a factory and you have your process in place, it's extremely disruptive to change anything. So they might use some of those things in the years to come, but not too many of the things that we figured out have made it into production. We're happy to share, but it's not easy for them to tell 3,000 people, here's the new way we're doing it,
Sure.
And not be late on half a year's worth of orders.
Sure. And I guess there's a competitive advantage. Like one thing that many bike brands struggle with is if their products are being made in the same factories as their competitors, how do you keep intellectual property separate and differentiation in terms of like what we consumers are seeing and buying? If there's just like as you're well aware, there's a common perception of certain brands being, well, that's just open mold. It's all the same stuff. It's just got different brands, stickers or brand,
Yeah, that absolutely happens. When we were first making like our pilot project for the small Ripley LS, we developed a reaming system for carbon that was better than anything the guys in Asia had. And we shared it with them so that they could make our headset fit more accurate. And they were using steel tools that were, high speed carbon steel tools, and they would last about 10 cuts before they started to be dull, because cutting carbon is really hard on the tools. And so they would just kind of run them dull for a while and then sharpen them and start over. And we made a diamond one and got it basically dialed into the exact size you want. And those will last tens of thousands of cuts. And we made two, one for us and one for them. And they said, "Oh, that's great," and they started doing everybody's head tubes with it, all of our competitors too, you know. And we were okay with that. It was fine to do them a favor and everything, but you're exactly right. That stuff it spreads around.
Yeah. Do you see a point in Ibis's future where you're making all of your carbon frames in the U.S.? Is that even a potential?
It's something that would require, even with reduced labor, it would still require quite a lot of employees, and our building isn't that we have for a factory just physically isn't large enough, and I'm not sure. All of these things are kind of one step at a time.
Sure.
To prove you're not just deluding yourself, that it really is going to work. And so our next step will be this next higher volume bike, and I think it'll be profitable. And if it goes well, and it is, we could probably add one more bike at the same facility. And after that, I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But we're a pretty small company. We only have 45 people right now, including our production staff. And so the idea of ramping up to 100 people or 150 people, it kind of gives me pause, you know.
Sure.
But we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Sure. Well, it's very interesting and encouraging, and fairly unique to see companies of any size beyond just like the individual builder making frames in the U.S.
I have to say that's part of our motivation is that it's considered, audacious and suicidal. So we're lucky because we have a bike company that's up and running that can support us while we figure things out. And if we were just doing it standalone, it would be really challenging. You'd have to invest and invest and invest with no return for quite a while. But because it's, we already have engineers and marketing and sales and
a well-known brand and loyal customers. And,
exactly. Yeah. So we're not starting from zero. And in fact, the main part of Ibis is like our big brother helping us along, so. Without that, it would probably be, it would be too high risk, I would say, for most people.
Sure.
But we've made it a long way. And, part of what we've done is reduce the energy required for our manufacturing process. And so we bought this building and we covered the whole roof of it with solar panels, and we've been generating twice as much energy as we consume. And so that amount of energy happens to kind of work out to be about the proper offset for the carbon materials we use as far as, greenhouse gases. So we're actually more or less greenhouse gas neutral on making these frames, which was one of our big goals. The other thing that's really neat is it's in an area where if you have a good job with health insurance and you make a decent wage, you're a local hero. I mean, it's a big deal. We live in an expensive area, but there's actually areas that are not too far from Santa Cruz that are really impoverished. And our employees there are like pillars of the community, and they're really proud of what we're making too. It's a neat job. And so that was another one of the goals of putting that factory in at Pajaro. You might have seen the floods when the levee broke. It was on the national news a couple of years ago now.
Yes.
Our building, the water was 6 feet deep outside or 5 feet deep outside, but the building is slightly elevated. because it was built on purpose to be above the floodplain. Yeah, wish us luck. We're going to keep pushing on this and hopefully grow it. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, the eyes of the bike industry, at least the American bike industry, are upon you, sir.
Yeah, and if anybody who's interested in making bikes here wants to get a tour, they can always contact us. And we've had people from a number of our competitors tour through, so don't be shy. Yeah.
Okay, I will share that, and I would like to take you up on that myself. Would love
Awesome.
to do a factory tour there.
It's pretty neat.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Hans. It was great to chat with you, and appreciate you making
likewise.
time. Chad Davis, good to see you, sir. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks a lot for this opportunity to chat, Ben. It's really great to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing all right. My shoulder's still not yet fully operational. It's still Death Star status, but
But you're on the bike.
I'm on the bike. Yeah, I'm just riding very delicately, but yeah, grateful to be out there.
Good to hear.
Yeah, so I've been talking to lots of different folks about making bikes and bike parts all over the world, and the last episode was why the majority of bikes, mostly frames, but also parts are made in Asia. And this episode, we're talking about pieces that are made in the U.S. So I'm just be curious to hear. Gulo makes the spokes in North Carolina at headquarters in Brevard, and then you import rims and hubs. So first of all, I'd like to hear why you make the spokes there, and what the trade-offs are for manufacturing in the U.S. versus buying it from somewhere else.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Ben. We do make the braided composite spoke here in Brevard, North Carolina, where our essentially parent company is located, and that's why we manufacture here. We're part of Cure Manufacturing, who's a 45-year-old company that's mainly focused on composites and ceramics manufacturing here. And that's the why we're here. And we also, of course, build the wheels. They're hand built here in Brevard as well.
Mm-hmm. And so the parent company doesn't do any aluminum or anything similar to the hubs, and that is why that is currently outsourced.
Yeah, that's correct. We don't do aluminum, or we don't do any production aluminum. That is, and that's the reason why they're outsourced. But they're also our hubs and rims both slightly require a custom drilling for us. Rims, there's a lot of rims that we could get away with using off the shelf rim, but we do have a rim that has customized drilling for our spoke. It has a slightly larger diameter than a normal nipple. It's threaded into the hub. We're definitely working on a couple made in the U.S. hub solutions right now with other manufacturers.
Okay, yeah, because I guess industry, and then it gets into an interesting thing where, in some ways, your competitor could also be your supplier. I don't know who you're speaking with, but just thinking off the cuff of Industry 9, also a North Carolina wheel company, and
they're actually one that we're speaking with for sure. Those guys are great. We love them, and they're just a little over 30 miles away from us.
Okay.
So we've been essentially since we started, we've been in negotiations with them to help us out with the hub, and it sounds like we'll have something worked out here soon. It'll initially first will only be in the mountain bike hub. But I think as things progress, we'll see it throughout the lineup, at least as an option for the customer. You may, depending on, tariffs and the way things go in the future. We could still have an option, for our custom hub that's out of Asia right now.
Okay. So what are the trade-offs for making stuff in the U.S. versus outsourcing it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, there's obviously trade-offs for both, and at the same time, both offer their unique advantages as well. Manufacturing in Asia, for us being a smaller company, and we uh, just started during the pandemic, less than 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest hurdles are kind of larger order sizes that are required for us, the lead times, and even sometimes the communication can be tricky, in dealing with that. And there's also the higher carbon footprint of sourcing from Asia as well. Both in manufacturing and shipping.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then how about if you were, making everything or buying everything in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that just a cost thing, or are there other issues
Yeah, I mean,
that you
I'd say really the only issue for us, it's not really a cost issue. Um, with the hubs, the hub prices really aren't that much difference, and they're in that much difference in pricing.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it's going back to the rims. We're just a little more limited, and a rim that kind of meets the ride qualities and weights that we're looking for to match our spoke really well, because the advantage to our spoke are that they're about half the weight of a steel spoke, and have a more compliant ride feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And for us to go to a rim that doesn't match that, it's really hard. And our options are definitely a little more limited here in the U.S. We've worked on finding those options for us here in the U.S. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to have a entirely made in the U.S. Wheel system, and I see it in our future, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely a little more challenging. We had the options in Asia are definitely much greater as far as finding that particular rim that matches your goals of your intended ride
Mm-hmm.
outcome.
So just because there's so much more of the cycling manufacturing industry is there, you've just got a plethora of options to choose from.
There's lots of options. I mean,
Yeah.
currently we deal with two different companies in Asia so we can basically, one company we think has better, or at least for us, better mountain bike rim solutions, and then another company we think has better road and gravel solutions for us. So
Mm.
we kind of mix those two companies.
And how about for your customers? How important, this is asking you to speculate, but how important is the where something is made to them? Are they interested in the fact that you have such a unique spoke story made there in Brevard, or is it just the technology that's cool and it doesn't matter where it's coming
Yeah.
from?
No, I think I think people who know Brevard or Western North Carolina, I think it's cool that we make stuff here. We definitely have, customers and, consumers that we're in contact with that would like to see options. It's more so, like I said, in the hub side of things. I think on the mountain bike, I think mountain bikers seem to be the more particular of the three right now, and that's why we're introducing the made in the U.S. hubs first on the mountain bike side. They're looking for a little bit better engagement, and not that our engagement is bad, but I mean it's kind of a trend in mountain bike in the mountain bike side of the wheel thing right now is to have this ultra quick engagement. And so we're definitely gonna listen to our customer and try to offer that with some options.
Sure. Well, best of luck to you. I'll be curious to see where Gulo goes in the future.
Yeah, I'm really excited to give you some good updates here in the future. We definitely have some exciting things going on, and hope to see you out there more next year.
All right. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for watching. Are you interested in where and how bikes and bike parts are made? I hope so, as I plan to continue doing factory tours around the world whenever I can. Wherever your bike is made, I hope you are able to get out there and enjoy the ride.